Welcome, friends and fellow nerds, especially newcomers to this channel. It is a brand new channel. I've decided to start a new thing on this channel. Previously was just sharing some gaming videos that I had from Call of Duty. Now we're looking at doing some comic book reviews and maybe talking about the MCU as a whole. Decided I wanted to learn a bit more about Kang the Conqueror because he seems to be spoilers, the next big bad of the MCU, but if you're paying close attention to the MCU and the news, you would know that the Multiverse Saga is heading in that direction, with Kang the Conqueror being the central villain, at least now here in Phase 5 of the MCU. So, not too many spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania up top. We're just going to be reviewing the Avengers issue 8, which is the first appearance of Kang the Conqueror. He's right there on the cover. This is written by Stan Lee and beautifully drawn by the king himself, Jack Kirby. So, yeah, excited to dive into this one. I just decided to go through a reading order of Essential Kang comics, and that's thanks to Comic Book Herald, who puts together great reading orders. So I'll share the link in the description below. But yeah, Kang first pops up as an Avengers villain in issue 8 of the Avengers. It also references in this issue that he pops up. He's popped up in Fantastic Four as a different character, and we'll get into that. And he's also faced off with Doctor Doom. So various iterations of Kang throughout the timeline, and that's sort of his thing. So if you don't know anything about Kang, whether or not you've seen Jonathan Majors' portrayal in the MCU, now thanks to being the central villain of the latest 31st film in the MCU, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, we have Jonathan Majors portraying Kang the Conqueror. Now, in Marvel, throughout my experience with Kang the Conqueror, he's been sort of a time-traveling villain, so he kind of stands out apart from... Well, Doctor Doom has dealt with time travel before. That's not his main thing. And Thanos, of course, is we've seen him in the MCU films wanting to collect Infinity Stones and cut down half of the universe's population. Kang is more concerned with the greater multiverse because he has figured a way to travel through time. Now, we will encounter and discover his origin together as we go through this reading order and dissect or review the comics that he first appeared in. But, just to tease ahead, he's been revealed to be Nathaniel Richards from the future. He claims to have been born in the year 3000, and then he was able to travel forward and then backward through time, mastering the timeline that we know to be the Marvel Universe, at least the main universe 616. But he kind of dabbles in traveling the multiverse and mastering time itself so that he can always be the winner. He seems to be hell-bent on winning and using his knowledge and power gained through time travel to do so. So, in this cover here, we see him facing off against the Avengers, and let's dive in. It says, it's Avengers issue 8, and it was released on July 9th of 1964 with a cover date of September 1964. And here we go. So, with this issue, it's only the 8th issue. We've just come off the Avengers facing off with, Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, and the Enchantress and the Executioner in the previous issue. And then, beyond this issue, the following issue is actually the introduction of Wonder Man. So in this issue, we have a brilliant first page with the title Kang the Conqueror. It says, just in time, top priority emergency meeting of the Avengers is about to begin. So the Avengers are a team in the public eye, although, Iron Man, one of its leaders, has a secret identity of Tony Stark. Not even the Avengers are aware of his true identity. We have a secret meeting or a meeting called with the Pentagon. So the mighty Avengers are the ones that the world looks to in the face of crisis. So they assemble to have this secret meeting with the Pentagon, and this is where it's been informed that there has been a seemingly alien encounter. A ship touched down on Earth. They refer to it as a UFO, and they surround it with the military, with tanks, where a cosmic ray actually emits from the ship and levels the ground, creating a glass-like surface, and then turns its weapons onto the tanks itself, causing the soldiers to flee as the tanks crumple into little pieces. Then we have Kang right out the gate, just showing up. Put away your childish weapons; they are no more than toys to me. So he's basically just hell bent on ruling, and he wants humans to submit to his demands. Not unlike Loki in issue 1. They used Loki as the antagonist for the first Avengers film, the Avengers, where he's basically trying to take over all humans by starting with the Battle of New York. But of course, we know that was a greater plot for the MCU to lead into the Infinity Saga and have Thanos collecting stones and assembling the Infinity Gauntlet. Now here we have, in the MCU at least, a storyline where they decided to go with the Ant-Man franchise, and I'll touch on why I think that was a good choice. They're not doing a one-to-one adaptation of any one comic book, but they are staying true to Kang the Conqueror's origins in the comics by what they've done in the MCU so far. So we have, in this case, in the MCU, Kang is trapped in the quantum realm, but he doesn't have the use of his ship throughout that movie. However, here he does have his ship, and he's boasting his abilities, his advanced tech from the year 4000, and also his abilities to manipulate time, is what he's going to use to survive and outlast the Avengers in this encounter. So, the Avengers are just discovering his abilities. Kang is kind of confident in the way he sits back and just lets them think they can attack him. He goes, "I shall demonstrate how powerless you are against Kang. At the mere touch of a button, I shall render you helpless." So a lot of the things that Kang is able to pull off, we actually see similar tech being employed in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So we have Thor trying to attack Kang with Mjolnir, and all Kang has to do is send Mjolnir through time and back to the present when he is safely out of the way. And this astonishes Thor and the rest of the team. Get a little bit about Kang's origin, just scratching the surface here in the issue 8 of the Avengers. Basically, he says, "I was born in the year 3000, where I mastered time travel. I journeyed to your far past, calling myself Pharaoh Rama Tut." So that's where we see him in Fantastic Four issue 19. Then I came to this century where I met Doctor Doom. So this happened in the Fantastic Four annual number 2. So this is the Marvel sort of explaining how deadly Kang is and his many forms throughout the timeline, that he is popping up all over the place in various forms, trying to rule all of the universe and presumably the multiverse. So he says, "Finally, I plan to return to my own century, year 3000, so I adjusted the molecular time drive to proper setting, but due to electrostatic disturbances in the relative time stream, my vehicle suffered a temporary mechanical failure." So that mechanical failure, where he's talking about this savagery of the year 4000, it's not a one-to-one reference, but it does, in my mind, call back to the situation he finds himself in the quantum realm in the Wasp: Quantumania, because he has to learn to adapt in this new environment and filled with different savage warriors and different types of advanced warfare. And he basically has to build an empire from this. So he's able to do it in the year 4000, and we've seen what he was able to do in the quantum realm and in the Lost Quantum Media. The Avengers are still testing his abilities and finding him to be quite formidable. And this is where I think it's an inspired choice to have Kang first pop up in the Ant-Man franchise. It very much did feel like a comic book movie, more aligned with things you would experience while reading Marvel Comics than most of the other outings in the MCU thus far. So, for better or for worse, I feel like they are starting to take bigger swings and lean into the craziness of the comics, and I applaud them for that. So, in this case, Ant-Man, or as he's known as, Hank Pym is Giant Man, and Janet is the Wasp, are very instrumental in the Avengers taking down Kang in this outing, in the first outing in issue 8. So it's fitting that they chose to introduce Kang the Conqueror in the Ant-Man franchise for the MCU. One of the more potent defenses I brought from the future is this antimatter screen, capable of instantly disintegrating any earthly matter it may touch. So while this antimatter screen is unable to take out Mjolnir, because Mjolnir is not of Earth, it still proves as a pretty effective weapon, or at least a defense for Kang, and it's the one that we've seen using on the cover of this issue. So, yeah, just more fighting while he's able to capture the Avengers in his ship and paralyze them. It leaves only the Wasp and Rick Jones to sort of bail the rest of the Avengers out of this predicament. So, yes, is it a little dated in the sense that some of the writing surrounding the Wasp feels like the Wasp doesn't get the strongest writing in this outing, but at least they give her a bit of a redemption arc, even though it doesn't start off the greatest for the Wasp. They end up giving her a lot to do in terms of saving the Avengers and bailing them out of the situation. So we have Kang. He says, "You saw what I did to the Avengers." He's giving them a chance to warn the rest of the world leaders. So this is kind of where Kang thinks he's won. And then we have Rick Jones and his teen brigade set out to first convince Kang that they're joining his cause, but only to distract them by slipping in unnoticed while the teen brigade retrieves this cylinder filled with precious fuel. He says, "That's my energizer tank. The pure energy force is leaking out. I've got to stop it." So this serves as the adequate distraction that the rest of the team would need. While the teen brigade is successfully distracting Kang, Thor is able to once again transform. This is during the time in the comics where he was Donald Blake and transforming into Thor and wielding Mjolnir. So the task is to find the Avengers. They have to help out Iron Man, who is suffering from his injured heart, while miles away in the well-stocked lab of biochemist Henry Pym, better known to the world as Giant Man. There's much time remaining before Kang's ultimatum expires. So Janet Van Dyne has to retrieve this advanced weapon. It's going to be their only shot at defeating Kang. Now, what I found was interesting about this, that again, lends to itself being a fitting choice to have Kang first pop up in the Ant-Man franchise, as Wasp gets to recruit Hank Pym's worker ants, the flying ants, to help her carry this weapon back to the rest of the Avengers for Giant Man to use against Kang. So it's, once again, it's this cool notion that Hank Pym was instrumental in taking down Kang with his many inventions and his relationship with the ants, and that is obviously a feature of quantum medium thing. So there's just little like parallels that I liked, or at least like I could see them calling back to certain moments in this first appearance of Kang when they were developing quantum medium. So here we have Giant Man, and he's able to take down Kang. But the aim and the eye and the heart and the masked many-sized adventurer are true. Giant Man does not miss. So, in this point, they're saying that Kang's suit is becoming all pitted, it will be useless to him. That also makes me think of when Kang was faced off against Scott Lang. You know, at one point near the end of the film, his suit gets damaged to the point where they are able to have a physical fight on a more even footing. In this case, Kang tries to use the last of his weapons against the Avengers, which is a missile coming from the ship, but Iron Man's able to use his repulsors to send it off into the open air. So they were able to thwart Kang, and when they tried to capture him, he was able to jump into his ship and disappear into time. "Cap, do you think he'll ever return?" asked Rick Jones. Says, "No one can say, Rick, but one thing is certain. He knows now that he isn't unbeatable. He knows if he returns, the Avengers will be waiting." So that concludes the first outing of Kang the Conqueror against the Avengers in issue number 8 back in 1964. It was, for a comic made in the 60s, I thought it was a pretty cool story. I thought Kang the Conqueror had a pretty interesting origin that they teased at, that has basically been improved upon over the decades, right? So now he's this epic Avengers villain that his backstory has been filled in a little bit more, and I think that's the point of what I'm trying to do with these reviews is I want to look at his early issues and go through some of his key issues to fully understand Kang the Conqueror more as an overall villain. And it's exciting now. I'll talk a little bit about spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania because it's exciting now that he's been introduced to know that he has all these variants that formed the Council of Kangs, and they're hellbent on taking over the multiverse. But from what we've heard in Loki season 1, he who remains was the ultimate version of Kang the Conqueror that was able to outlast his variants and live on at the Citadel at the end of time. So he was the survivor once he was able to end the multiverse war. Now that we've seen Loki and Sylvie and they've managed to kill he who remains, he cautioned that basically the time stream is now going to be broken again. The multiverse has been unleashed. Is no longer in control of the sacred timeline. So the MCU is now opened wide up. The MCU has now opened up wide to this multiverse saga that they're building towards. So to see Kang in his most he had the confidence of Kang the Conqueror from the comic, but Jonathan Majors' portrayal of him in the Wasp: Quantumania, he's more subdued in the sense that we know Kang to be this time-traveling villain from the comics, and his greatest weapon at his disposal, time itself, he was not able to deploy against his battle against the Ant-Man family. So I can understand why someone might go in and watch Quantumania and not think he's sort of the ultimate big bad because, Scott Lang has been able to thwart him, but he had the help of Hank Pym, his technology, their adventure in the quantum realm. I don't think it diminishes in the sense as the overall big bad from that we know from the comics because I don't think he's fully gone, and even if he is, he has variants to rise to the occasion. These variants that had put him in the quantum realm in the first place are plotting, and we see this in the mid-credit sequence. So, someone's going to be able to use the abilities of time travel against the Avengers, and when we see that unfold in something like Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, we're going to see a much more formidable Kang. And I just thought this was a solid first outing. And Jonathan Majors is menacing as Kang, so just makes me want to see more of him. And I thought everyone else in the Wasp: Quantumania did a great job. So I think overall it just gets me excited that we're going to see more of this villain Kang the Conqueror in the MCU, and that's why I've decided to read through some of his key issues, starting with his first appearance in Avengers issue 8. Thanks for tuning into this review, and look forward to more coming at you soon.